Okay, well, thank you all for being here. What we have here are three individuals who could probably talk for an hour each on the topic, and we have 20 minutes. So we're going to kick it off really fast by having them each introduce themselves and spend a minute, and I'm going to hold you to a minute. We're going to have a gong, which I have under here, and describe what you think about VR, where you come from, and what you see in the future. 1 minute.
Huh. Thought I'd have a minute to prepare. I am the Director of Innovation for IEEE Standards Association. I'm unofficially their futurist, but they won't put that on the title. My main focus is where mixed reality and a number of other associated technologies will converge over the next generation, which sort of constitutes its own technology with its own logic. I'm especially interested in standards because of my role at IEEE, and especially as regards to interoperability and data transfer and so forth, which I think will happen across disciplines as these technologies converge with each other. I'm also trying to bring in the film community because I think that creative artists and storytellers are going to be crucial to the evolution of VR.
So I'm J.C. Curelop. I'm head of business development for Nokia Digital Media. We produce the Ozo camera there. And our interest here in being at USC and being in the medical community is because we at Nokia really see VR as more than motion picture and television entertainment. To us, it's really a transformative medium. It's a completely new industry, similar to, for example, 3D printing, which has applications not only across entertainment and advertising and sports, but healthcare and training and science. It is really the first or second lap of what is the Indy 500. We're only seeing this VR in the very infancies, and the applications that I see on a weekly basis from companies and executives and doctors and scientists coming to us asking to borrow the camera or see the camera or buy a camera vary so greatly that it's blown my mind in the short time I've been at Nokia. So really think this is the beginning of something fantastic.
Evan Hirsch. I started as a product designer, and then I wound up in entertainment, and I've gone back to design and entertainment back and forth for many years. The last few years, I was working with the American Medical Association on innovation strategy, and I opened up their digital lab in San Francisco. But I've also had the pleasure of working with Skip and some of the folks at ICT for years. And I've been working for years in computer graphics and design and where that meets emotion and how we use emotion and technology to get you to do things that are different. And it used to be I was just a sell it and wanted you to do it for fun. Now I actually want to make up for my evil ways and get you to do things for goodness. And VR to me is funny. I have a very different take on it. It's probably the 6th or 7th major platform change I've worked on the last 15 years. And I think it's just another platform. I think it's a very powerful platform, but it's a matter of what you do with it, not what it is.
We've seen VR come and go, rise and fall of the public enchantment and the research and development in virtual reality. What makes it different this time? What do you guys think is it different? And we've seen a lot of also market projections, a lot of pie in the sky kind of things. Could you address that as well?
Sure. I think it's the way that VR is evolving. I think is. First, we have the technology now that we didn't have 10 years ago, and that's a big difference. In fact, you look at the headsets, and they're really sort of pushing it to the limit. So that's one thing. One similarity to film, and I'm not focusing on film, but one similarity is that the audience, I think, has to evolve with the developers. And we all have incorporated as movie viewers certain ways, film techniques, for example. And they're very unnatural when it comes, compared to the real world. Switching from this to a nightclub in Prague, for example, we take that sort of thing for granted in films. We don't have that syntax, that vocabulary, we don't have that language for VR yet. And I think that it's more than a matter of somebody coming up with a way of doing it, so to speak. It's really a sort of a ratcheting effect where the artists develop and the audience responds, the audience learns, and so forth. You couldn't really present a modern film probably to an audience 70 years ago and have it make a lot of sense. So I think we're at a very immature stage at VR right now. The technology is barely able to handle it, but I think that the real challenge is going to be with creating the content that's meaningful.
Yeah, I mean, Skip, I think it's about accessibility. It's accessibility to the technology, it's about accessibility to the content, and it's about accessibility for the developers as well. 15 years ago when I was at EA, we didn't have much of a craft of making games, and we spent a large amount of time and effort to figure out what that craft needed to be. And I think the craft of making VR that communicates effectively or engages and retains users and doesn't make users angry or upset is to your point, the next challenge we're going to face. But I think it's about accessibility to tools and accessibility to a craft.
I'll echo some of the points that are here. Obviously, the technology's evolved night and day since 10 years ago, but the consumer adoption and the way consumers experience media has also evolved, and especially with the younger generation, it's evolving that way too now. So a 10-year-old's kid idea of social interactivity and immersion is very different than 50-year-old adults, for example. So the craft has changed and the technology's improved. To both of your points, we're still very early on in terms of storytelling and the art of how to tell a story in VR. Obviously, we're here at USC.
Or even if it should be a story.
Or if it should be a story at all. It's something totally different. Somewhere on this campus in the film school, there's some 21-year-old who's going to make the great first VR film, and that will be kind of the model that others use for the next 10 years until some 16-year-old out of Hong Kong goes to film school too and does the same thing.
Just on that, one of the things I want to talk about is control. And I think the big difference now is people expect to be in control. Mobile broke so many models that if they're not in control and they're not feeling empowered or godlike within a few seconds, they're out of the experience because it didn't cost them anything to get in it. And I think with the accessibility now and the expectation of control in our activity, I think linear experiences will only go so far. And I think finding that blending point of when I'm in control or when I'm not in control and when I'm engaged actively or passively is a very big part of what you're discussing.
Yeah, just one more point. We're at a funny stage right now where a lot of what I'm hearing today with digital medicine is basically turning the human life into a narrative. And the life is a story. It has conflicts, it has a beginning and an end, it has a lot of the components that you expect from a good story. And I think VR, or mixed reality in general, offers an unprecedented opportunity to fulfill that metaphor in a sense. Unfortunately, we're still grasping around in the dark as to how to actually lay out a narrative in that form. So there's enormous potential, but there's a lot of development, I think, that has to happen between now and then.
Yeah. Evan, you've worked in the game industry over the years, and what I'm seeing lately in mental health, rehab, medicine, a lot of startups. In the last year, probably more startups than in the last 20 years. A lot of times driven by game development philosophy, ecosystems, and so forth. What do you see as the challenges, and I guess this is for all of the folks here, what do you see as the challenges and the assets for people in the gaming industry or the entertainment industry moving towards medical applications?
Thanks, Skip. I mean, this actually applies way beyond VR. This is, I think, a problem we've seen throughout the history of this room, is that because you have a cool technology doesn't mean it has a use. Because you have a cool technology doesn't mean I should trust it. And because you have a cool technology doesn't mean anybody gives a damn. And so, when I talk to developers, or even I talk to my own design teams, the question is why? Why does the user care? So what problem are you solving, and why do I care? And then the next question, really more and more in this last 5 to 10 years, especially in the last 5 years, is why should I trust you? So it's about how do you build trust. So when we talk about it in design terminology or interactive design terminology, the currency, I talk about currency. And the currencies are rewards and investments. When should I ask the user to invest in me, in my experience, and give me their emotions, give me their trust, give me their belief? And how do I reward them? Because what I know from games, and funnily enough, what I learned from Surface, when we launched Surface, was God is everything. Meaning, if I feel like I'm godlike and I'm powerful, I'll stay with you through everything. But the minute you make me feel stupid, I'm done, I walk away. And that was probably my most important learning in the last 10 years is it's never the user's fault. It doesn't make a difference what technology it is. If it's the user's fault, you made them feel stupid, and you can never get that trust back. Mm-hmm. So that's really the game-like thing of emotional currency in really practical terms in this space.
Mm-hmm. We think of games, maybe not a lot of people in this room, but I think popularly people think of games as just entertainment, as lightweight stuff. It really can be seen, I mean, if you look at gamification, it's really a systematized, guided experience of some kind. And you know, if you look at the way the technologies will converge over the next generation, where mixed reality, let's say, is the standard way to perceive data and content. But you've also got a strong AI backbone. All of us could walk down the same city street and basically see different things. You know, when that starts to happen, you can call it games or you can call it something else, but in effect, you've gamified large aspects of your life. Everything from purchasing to education to socializing and so forth. And the AI system, I think, ideally would guide those experiences transparently.
Yeah, I mean, the AI systems could guide them, but one of the beauties or the strange things about VR is, as you said, I believe, the consumer or the viewer actually guides themselves, right? So you can't drive them down a particular path anymore. You are not in control of that consumer. You're not in control of that experience. At the same time, that allows that experience to be that much more immersive. I mean, we've seen study after study where people are under the the head-mounted display, the gear, and they think that they've been in there to 10, 15 minutes, and they've been there for 40 minutes because they've completely lost control of the sense of time and where they are. They're completely in the experience. It also heightens the senses that way. They get much more excited at seeing something in an HMD, experiencing it, assuming it is of good quality, otherwise they'll go away. But if it is of good quality, they will experience that, be a lot more heightened. Heart rates will go up, excitement will go up, frankly, purchase intent goes up. So there's a variety of outcomes that comes from that kind of experience.
And by the way, on your point of quality, and something I know Skip's learned through his work, quality doesn't necessarily mean photoreal. It just means, what I say is it's got to be cohesive and together and consistent. Don't ever snap the user out of whatever reality you create. Because photoreal is exceptionally hard to do in a film, let alone in a VR headset, when you don't know what the next thing is going to happen is. So just be consistent. It can be very low quality graphics, just be consistent.
Hey, Skip. Yep. I'm just curious your opinion, and Evan, you know, JC lent us the camera, right? We did this thing. Do you think this is, knowing all you know with your work, and Evan, do you think this is going to be effective for patients? This movie we showed to build trust with their urologic?
Yeah.
I'm curious.
I do, but
this is an entertainment camera we took to...
The thing I kept thinking about what it is, the camera did such a good job, but it was taking away the intimacy of what that experience I wanted to offer me. And I just think that's a matter of not the camera. I think it's the way it's so new. To your point, Jay, is we haven't learned how to use this medium yet. So that camera is such a new media that for me, I kept looking at it, oh, come on, get closer. Just get closer. And let me create that line of action that you have in film or that line of intimacy that you feel that I think is coming. I just don't think we know how to use it yet.
I'd like to add, I think immersing someone in this type of environment activates emotions in a different way than the over-habituated viewing of a flat panel video. You have control, you have agency, you're in a space. Our research has shown doing that, people not only remember things more from that experience than if they're looking on a flat panel. Even if there's more information available, they still remember more of the content because you have context as well. It's very easy to generate an emotional experience, and the combination of the emotion with the cognitive awareness, I think, is going to add value. Now, we have to study this. We don't have a crystal ball, but these are empirical questions. And this goes to my next question. We see a great industry partnership with academia and medicine here, and a number of them today. What do you guys see as the challenges for industry to partner with academics? We have different goals, values, needs. What are the challenges, but also what are the potential benefits that you see?
The challenge is there's a few challenges. The most obvious one is, unfortunately, capitalism itself. Big corporations are for-profit entities, and so the amount of time or cameras or effort or manpower we can loan or give to any particular academic study is still limited based on the fact that we all have a P&L we have to meet, unfortunately. The potential is huge. If you can find that mix where, whether it's an R&D project that you can sell to my management that says, okay, we're spending X right now, but over the course of 3 years, we're going to develop the new technology in the next version of Ozo with this, and it'll be better for medicine, and we'll be able to sell $1 billion worth of it, that's kind of the pie in the sky, theory. But that is kind of the limiting factor at this point. Having said that, all of us are human beings, at least Nokia, and we all want to meet our P&L, but at the same time do something that's good for humanity. We're not here simply because we want to sell a camera or because we want to create movies. We really think that this is a new technology, right? We all came from different industries as this little startup within Nokia, and we really think this is groundbreaking across multiple areas, from training to healthcare and otherwise. And as much as we can do this and contribute to that and develop this not only as a medium but for healthcare and for the good of the country, the society itself, we definitely are very interested in that kind of thing.
Oh, you said everything I was thinking.
Okay, we got 3 minutes and 20 seconds left.
Just something I want to make a point of, Leslie, is there's a notion of weighting when we talk about in animation or visual information or visual hierarchy of weighting. And one of the things that was so interesting about the hackathon is the winners carries in front of me, as opposed to one of the other teams that did a great job yesterday with depression, is that it's so easy to become overwhelmed in VR space that I think it gets even more interesting when we can start helping know what's important, what's not important, which is almost for free in film because it's the physics of a camera lens. Right. And I think when we get to that level of helping people know what's important at what time, and that I think will really drive the value of medical VR and where it can go. Because right now, any patient's overwhelmed just by listening to a physician, let alone putting them into a position where they can experience more. I think is about this issue again of weighting, what pose matters, what information matters at what point in time, and what's the relevancy to it in the context of it. But great work you guys did with the I think the point was you guys in fact reverse weighted, right? You removed what's the most important thing, and it makes you realize what you're missing.
Okay, we got 2 minutes and 17 seconds. You guys got to fight over the time. What are we going to be talking about in 2020 at this conference?
Nostalgia about how we used to have to wear headwear to do this.
Oh, yeah, the good old days, the old headsets. Yeah.
I mean, I'm curious to see, the technology that we saw earlier on the surgical simulations, things like that. Because, I've always been, I've looked at projects like that as there's just such a heavy cost. And do things like the Nokia thing, bring that down so actually you can see much more of that. Because the ability to make VR is cheaper, but it's still a lot of content to be gathered. And then I'm also hoping that somebody figures out a way to do hierarchy and imposing hierarchies on VR.
Mm-hmm. So I'll echo both those and agree, and also say that I think 2020 will be asking ourselves how we lived without this for so long. Right? It'll be lighter, it'll be faster, it'll be more immersive, and it'll be across not just healthcare, but training, science, space exploration, whatever you may be. I mean, I always think about police training, right? It's been in the news this week because of the tragedies in, Tulsa and North Carolina, excuse me. I mean, imagine if, they can't train police because it's too expensive, but if you can train them every single month in a VR experience, which is more immersive, gets the heart pumping, gets your adrenaline flowing, teaches you how to be restrained, do you prevent certain of these tragedies or not? And this is just one example of 1,000 across various industries globally that VR will be able to change and affect.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, what about, we've got 45 seconds. All right, we can build photorealistic worlds and we can build high-fidelity graphic worlds that allow for interaction. And now we can build virtual humans that represent real people. Where do you see that going? Where are we going to be?
You can't make them interesting.
Well, yeah, not yet.
I think something like an old Second Life in a modern context, something like a Project Sansar or something like that, I think could create a basis for a lot of activities, including photorealistic avatars that you interact with that have behavioral traits and so forth, and you can use for an infinite number of purposes.
Ironically enough, there are certain industries north of the valley here that actually are creating that kind of experience themselves, using these kind of cameras and VRs to try to simulate certain human activities with another human.
Let's thank Dr. Albert Skip Rizzo, Evan Hirsch, J.C. Curelop, and Jay Iorio.